I played Final Fantasy IX when it came out in July of 2000, and I haven't really circled back to it for the last 20 years. Well, I finally did, and let me tell you that it remains phenomenal, and it's one of these games that ages with you. What an incredible experience from start to finish, and honestly, it left me more emotional now as a 36-year-old than it did then. Final Fantasy IX is playful. It is serious. It is about life. It is about death. It's about joy. It's about sorrow. It's about finding our place in the world, and it's about being with people you love. There's something so incredibly profound about Final Fantasy IX, and the music, of course, is bar none amazing. Probably one of the best soundtracks from the Final Fantasy franchise to ever exist. I don't know how I'm going to make this video less than 2 hours, but I'm going to try. We start off with the place I'll return to someday. We're entering into this Baroque soundscape, which is really not something we typically hear in Final Fantasy. This really goes back to a medieval experience, and boy, this soundscape takes it away, doesn't it? It's the type of song you would hear servants playing, bards playing in a tavern, something around the Baroque time period, or certainly earlier than that. What I love about this track in particular is that it really sets the stage for where we are in the game time period. This feels like a Middle Ages, bordering on slightly Baroque element here. You know, castles and fiefdoms and servants and serfs and, you know, the flutes especially. They move together in contrapunto movement, one going down, the other going up. There's a real sense of location. We feel like we are in the Middle Ages. There's mud and there's gunk. And even though these airships move us from place to place because of mist and we're working on steam power, there's a real sense here that there is a little bit of technology, but really it is rooted in a fictional middle-aged time period, and that is extremely cool. But of course, like all Final Fantasies, eventually we get that big reveal, we get a twist at near the middle end, and we're thrust into this cyberspace element of this game that is so fascinating to me because it doesn't always work. Final Fantasy 16 was one game where we had a big shift and suddenly we were in a sort of space experience, and I would feel like Final Fantasy 9 does the same thing and obviously did it first. Final Fantasy 9 was, I think, the first one to feature pandemonium, which we see a lot in the Final Fantasy 14 raids. It's just so cool to have this game experience where we are in a location, but then we're not. We're in a larger conflict that is more dealing with space and universes and things like that. It's so unique, and it certainly is a thrust back to the classic Final Fantasy style, the crystals and the importance of crystals, and, you know, all the things that came before Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, castles and kingdoms, and yeah, it's incredible. You know, eventually we meet Vivi, one of our main characters. And Vivi's theme is not necessarily my favorite theme in the game, but what I love about it is it shows Vivi's inquisitiveness, Vivi's curiosity. As it starts as this plucking string, playful sound quality here. A little awkward, a little shy, a little tepid. The singing of the percussion, this bouncing quality in here. This bumbling around, you really get the sense that you can feel Vivi's movements as he's walking, exploring the city of Alexandria, taking it all in. There's a genuine curiosity in this. It's not my favorite theme, but Vivi's theme is full of playful curiosity and joy. It is so becoming of Vivi. We don't know much about Vivi when we start this, and he falls prey to Puck and traveling around Alexandria and getting into trouble, and he's just trying to make his way in the world. And so there is this bumbling, almost awkward, tripping over oneself quality that we also see when we experience Vivi in this game. And then, we move forward and we continue through the soundtrack and we get to this incredible sequence of this theater troupe's performance. Now, we as players know what the theater troupe's big plan is, but we have to participate in the play ourselves, which is why Vamo alla Flamenco is such an amazing theme. And one of the most incredible parts of this game, a silly little mini game featuring some of the best music in Final Fantasy IX, absolutely bar none. A flamenco tango element here. And I have yet to get 100% audience approval. I've never actually succeeded at totally completing and making everybody happy. I don't know what the secret is, but that piece is so funny because it's really only around for such a short period of time. Literally just a mini game. And yet that track motivates us and it moves us. And something really cool about melody in general is that melody allows for things to get in our head. We are able to then follow patterns better as we follow along with a melodic experience. Melody helps us enjoy ourselves. Melody allows us to focus up. Melody can also almost be like a meditative experience. Melody casts itself over our ears and allows us to do what we need to do, almost like we're in a trance. A trance, not to be confused with the limit break sequence that occurs in this game. It's really, really, really neat. And of course, while we search for the princess, we get decisive action. And this is when we introduce the Baroque into this game. We get harpsichord, which would be absolutely at home in Bach's time period. So we start the game in this middle-aged soundscape, and now we enter into the castle seeking Garnet. And it's harpsichord. And that's really interesting because that sound could easily be in the Baroque time period in the world of classical music. That's a totally legitimate harpsichord arrangement and a harpsichord piece that could have been played during the Baroque time period. And then after that, we get introduced to the Jesters of the Moonless Night. Jazz piano. When this plays, we don't know the level and degree of Zorn and Thorn's villainy. We don't know what they're fully capable of. And so this music actually comes across as way more playful than anything else. It's an amazing theme to introduce a sub-villain in this game that's really, really satisfying. And then, of course, we meet Steiner. And Steiner's theme, much like Vivi's theme, is not my favorite, but what it does incredibly well. It's setting characterization for Steiner as a bumbling idiot. Heavy plotting on these instruments. You feel the armor on Steiner, you know? He's trying so hard. Owned and committed by his duty at this part of the game. The clarinet gives it an air of silliness almost. But that constant plodding rhythm is really where we feel that lumbering quality. It's a fantastic track, even though it's certainly not my favorite. But moving forward, we get to... And the first time we really hear that Melodies of Life motif. When Garnet and Zidane first lay eyes on each other. I might be misspeaking there. It may not be when they meet each other for the first time, but certainly that Melodies of Life motif is pervasive in this game, and it actually changes shape quite a bit as we experience the game and as we move through the game. Melodies of Life appears in many different ways in many different places, and all of them have their own significance. So while the motif is that, it morphs and changes throughout each time. While I do think that Final Fantasy IX's motif is that of Melodies of Life, I do think that it morphs itself each time it plays. So it always means something different each time, rather than being a standard leitmotif, which is symbolic of characters or places. It is a theme that really deviates past standard construction of what a motif is, and I think that we can't associate any one thematic element to it because it changes each time we hear it. Some other really incredible pieces to me are the frontier village of Dali. And this is so smart because this music sets it as a peaceful farm location. It hides what Dali is actually all about. The upper register notes in here, as well as the guitar, give it such a feeling of warmth. And Dali's a really idealistic and idyllic place. It's bright, it's full of greenery and grass, wide open fields. And now we get to one of my favorite themes from the game, Zidane's theme. What a bright and effervescent theme here. We never lose sight of Zidane's joyfulness of life, his playfulness, his sarcastic banter, his willingness to face life head on, his joy of flirting with Dagger, his joy for being friends with everybody he meets, his openness to wanting to help out the team. Even though he's a crook and a thief, he wants to play by the rules, and he also wants to have fun doing it. I think Zidane is a really warm character that really deviates from the standard tropes that we've seen. He's enigmatic, he's playful, he's jovial, he's funny, he doesn't take life seriously at all. That's in very stark difference, of course, to Freya's theme, one of the absolute best themes in this game. The harpsichord makes its reappearance. This motif highlights Freya's suffering and pain, what her people have gone through. Her desperately searching for her love. It's a song of duty, of responsibility. It's unbelievably sublime. What I love about Freya's theme is that even though it's a pretty repetitive motion, what we really feel and hear is the somber and sorrowful quality that is Freya's life. Freya picks on Zidane, she plays with Zidane, but her commitment to her love and her wanting to be with her love is so present in this theme. There's a somber quality in there that is so incredibly beautiful, and I think it's a real sense of longing that comes out in that theme unbelievably well. The repetitive motion, of course, is in there, yes, but there's also just the way that the motif ascends and descends, it's just sublime. And that leads way to Kuja's theme, which is by far one of my favorite themes in the game as well. And you can say what you want about Kuja as a villain, and certainly I don't think that he's as strong a villain as, say, Kefka or Sephiroth. But Kuja actually has a really fascinating transformation and story to tell as well. He seems a little bit kind of, not really fleshed out or maybe a little bit superficial, but Kuja's theme is by far one of the most exceptional themes in Final Fantasy history as far as I'm concerned. To me, there's no villain that has a theme as good as that. And of course, the organ variation that comes later is absolutely enchanting. And I think part of it is because there is a bit of sadness in that theme, but overall that theme is really, really, really devious. It's not like One Winged Angel. It's not like Dancing Mad. It's not like, when we meet Kefka for the first time, when we see Sephiroth have his transformation in the basement of Shinra Mansion, there's a real sound quality in here of playing the game and knowing how to play it well. There's just an undulating repeated rhythm, but that melody again is so stark and fascinating to listen to. And of course, we can't even forget the city themes, especially Lindblum. Which borders on a playful samba almost. That's fascinating. Or the Treno Sleepless City Joplin soundscape. sounding just like the entertainer in a lot of ways. You get yourself a little ragtime here. Not dissimilar to The Entertainer by Scott Joplin. And then you even deviate into much more experimental sounds with Gargan Roo. Or Cleyra's Trunk. That dreamy-like quality of feeling like you're entering into a whole new world of music and people. It's like stepping into a floating surface and feeling like you're like drowning in water. But then you go back to something like the tantalus theme. Love these big rhythmic movements, especially in that lower piano. That sax. The stomping, the tiptoeing, the tapping. Bright, very different from Cleyra's Trunk. Lots of piano in this soundtrack. Not to be confused with the dancing of Eternally Good Harvest. With its string-forward approach. The intensity in this. As they pray to bring the rain. And then we move into Roses of May, Beatrix's theme. After the events of Cleyra, Beatrix questions Brana. And this is when the plot starts to shift a bit. that's a faster version of Melodies of Life too. I mean, there's just so much in this that is incredible. And gosh, I'm trying not to make this a 2-hour video, but I can't help myself, because then of course we go to Fossil Roo. And again, we have this otherworldly, other continent sound quality. As well as Conde Petie. We really lean into a tribalism here. Lots of heavy use of drums, pan flute sounds. I mean, what Uematsu was able to do with this game is beyond belief. The soundtrack is incredible. There are so many good tracks. And I also like that we tied together previous motifs into something like the Black Mage Village, which is just Vivi's theme, expanded on. So funky. It's so funky because we're finally witnessing the Black Mages in one place. This unknown entity. And so all of this has this mysterious quality. Like, what are they? What is this? Ah, but they're connected to Vivi. There's a connection here. There's just so many good tracks in this game. Esto Gaza, a place we're in for maybe 10 minutes. Holy, religious. That choir soundscape, being in this place of religiosity beyond us. And you get this beautiful jazz thing. And of course, we cannot talk about Final Fantasy IX soundtrack without talking about one of the fundamental pieces of this entire game. The entire time you play this game, Zidane is a bright, cheerful, lovely, bubbly, borderline on annoying sometimes character. And then there's a moment when we get to Bronball and everything makes sense. We discover the truth about who Zidane is, who Kuja is, who Garland is, what the whole point of all of this is, and what the point of this game is, and why we're introduced to this character. And all of a sudden, everything switches. We have a moment where the playfulness is gone. The plot finally becomes serious. We finally dip into the real reasons for why we're here. And this is the bait and switch about Final Fantasy IX that I think is really interesting. And the people that can't look past the kiddie aesthetic of it, the chibi, young, bright, colorful aesthetic of it, they failed to get to this point because this is when everything changes. This is when the game becomes about identity. Who am I in this world? What is the purpose? What is the meaning? What do you mean we're all going to die? What does death have to do with anything? And yeah, we have the discussion, of course, when Vivi meets the Black Mages, and we find out that there's a timeline, and we're all born in a timeline. But this is really what kicks me about this game, is that this is the moment that everything switches for Zidane. When he's rude to his friends, when he feels like he's been broken, when he doesn't know anything about what life is anymore. Zidane questions everything here. He shuns his friends. He leaves the kids, Eiko and Vivi, out to fend for themselves. He abandons his friendships. He turns his back on the people that have loved him. Wouldn't you? Finding out a truth so harsh? Your entire personality, your entire existence, the reason why you're put on Earth, was for something completely different, completely terrible. Most about that theme is that theme continues even while we're fighting. It exists through the fight. We don't have battle music. We don't have boss music. We have the music of Zidane trying to come to terms with who he is and his friends saying, hey, wake up. You are us and we are you. We are a team. We are in this together. You are not alone. Despite how bad this might feel, despite the truth that you've discovered, everything is going to be okay. And that's an amazing, amazing musical moment and an amazing story moment. It's amazing when he comes to terms with who he is. And that enables him to then have that discussion with Kuja. And the most amazing thing about Kuja is that in the beginning of this game, Kuja, while he may be a mysterious, scary figure, he can kind of be downplayed quite a bit. He doesn't have that seriousness that some of the other Final Fantasy villains have. But then we get to the moment when Kuja discovers that he too is on a timeline. Is that he is going to die. And so instead of accepting that he has a possible end and that he will meet his end and he will die, he decides to bring the whole world with him in that rage. And it's a quick shift, I find. This moment of being like, well, what's the point of living? Fuck all this. I'm bringing everybody down with me because if I can't be here for forever, neither can anybody else. And that prompts us to then have to face Kuja and be like, whoa, hold on. And that's when we get the incredible, incredible Messenger of Ruin. So the incredible thing about this theme is that we really have Kuja at the peak of his anger. This is when Kuja's backed into a corner. He's mastered the trance. He understands trance. And I think that that's what you hear in the music especially. We have two opposing melodies. And actually it's kind of funny because this track doesn't sound too dissimilar to Ultimisia Phase 3 when we fight Griever, I believe it's Phase 3. I forget what the name of the track is. But there's actually a lot of similarities between this track and that track. And I think it's Uematsu sort of borrowing from himself, but also learning, what makes a really good melody and what makes a really good boss theme. But Kuja here is at the brink. Kuja's entire world, just like Zidane's earlier, is completely wiped out. He has no concept or understanding about what he's supposed to do. His life, he just discovered, essentially has no value other than to serve a purpose. And so he feels completely empty. It's not like other boss fights, especially not certainly like Dancing Mad, where we feel like we're up against a god. Kuja is very powerful. This doesn't feel like a typical boss battle. This feels like we have to stop him because we need him to understand that if he does this, he's going to ruin everything. And he has to come to terms with his own life. He's incapable of doing that. And so he feels this vengeful rage and this anger towards us and towards the world. And even less so us, I would say, more towards the entire world as a whole. And that's what makes Kuja really interesting to me, is that Kuja's just a suffering boy at the end of the day. He discovers the truth that all of us discover, in that we are on a timeline and we have no idea when that timeline will end. And he was promised something, and he always feels like he's second best, especially because he knew the truth of Zidane the whole time about their relationship. And I find that this fight is really painful for Kuja. It's painful for everybody. It's a really haunting theme. And I love the end. I love the end of this game. Zidane goes back to be with his brother, and they share a moment together before the vines of the leafy tree conjoin themselves into them. And they have an honest and heartfelt discussion that they haven't been able to have the entire game. And we get that discussion at the end of the game. And it's such a beautiful human moment, and what makes the Final Fantasy series so good. And this is really unique to me compared to other boss fights that I've played or experienced, and I haven't played all of them, but this particular moment, brother and brother sitting together discussing what it means to be who they are and what it means to live life. Kuja's hurt. Zidane is hurt and tired. And then we don't see from Zidane. We don't see from him for many months. And then the big reveal happens, and we get one of the most beautiful songs of the game, Beyond the Door. A happy ending for once. Those bright flutes and bassoon and clarinet, the twinkling of the birds, the bright sky. Garnet and Zidane are finally together. Everybody ends up happily ever after in a lot of ways. The Melodies of Life motif playing again, symbolizing something different this time. They've gone through so much together as a team, as a group. They've all gone on their own lives and lived life. I think to me what makes Final Fantasy IX one of the greatest Final Fantasies, and certainly one of the best stories I've ever experienced in a video game or otherwise, frankly, is the fact that it's not afraid to talk about the things that are really, really deep and true about life and about death and about moving forward and finding purpose. All of us have a job to do. All of us have a responsibility to ourselves to try to find what makes us tick, what makes us work, why we exist, why we are here, what is our purpose, even though we all have a timeline, an end date, when things are going to stop working. That's one of the most beautiful and most painful parts about life, is that life is temporary and life is fleeting, and we have no idea when it's going to end and when things are going to shift, and we have no idea when we're going to lose the things we love, and so on and so forth. But we can still try every moment to embrace life as it comes, to embrace the fact that there is a timeline, to embrace it. Not like Kuja did, where he refused to believe that there was a real possibility that his life could have end, and that his life was devoid of meaning. Everybody's life has meaning, and everybody's life has value. And discovering that and allowing ourselves to believe that is something that can really bring us happiness, even if it's temporary. I find that to be an incredibly beautiful sentiment. Final Fantasy IX can be perceived as kiddish or playful or silly or not that deep. But it's quite the opposite, I think. And if you're still here, I'd love to know what you think about Final Fantasy IX and where it ranks for you, not only in Final Fantasy, but also in your life. What does it mean to you? It certainly means a lot to me. Thanks a ton, and I'll see you later. Bye.